All right, A&P2 students, we are now going to discuss we're still in the lower gastrointestinal tract, looking at those structures, and we've talked about the small intestines. So now we're going to talk about the accessory digestive system organs that are in the lower part of our digestive tract. So they include the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. And so I wanted to show you this picture. Hopefully it'll make some sense here. Excuse me. This is the pancreas here. So this little lobulated structure. And this is the gallbladder. And then it's not showing the liver, but the liver would be up here because here's the hepatic ducts here. So the liver would be up here. So what I wanted you to understand is the purpose of the liver is to produce the bile. So the liver will produce the bile, and then that bile will drain through the right and left hepatic ducts, and then it'll go into that common hepatic duct, and then the common bile duct. And that common bile duct, will be connected to the major duodenal papillae. So that little area where the bile is going to be able to drain into the duodenum here. Now, the gallbladder's function is to store that bile. So if the little sphincter is closed and bile that's coming from the liver can't go down there, then the bile will make its way up through the cystic duct into the gallbladder, and then it'll be stored there until it's needed. So the main focus or main function of the gallbladder is just to store the bile. The liver is actually the organ that's going to make the bile, and we'll talk about how it does that. All right, so either way, whether the bile's coming directly from the liver, it's going to enter the duodenum through that major duodenal papillae, or if it's coming from the gallbladder, it'll still make its way to that common bile duct and head to the duodenum through the major duodenal papillae. The pancreas is in close proximity to the liver and stomach and duodenum, and so it's also going to have a role in digestion. It is going to release digestive enzymes and some bicarbonate into that duodenum through the major duodenal papillae. So all of its secretions, the digestive enzymes and the bicarbonate, are going to be produced in the pancreas, and then they'll get into the pancreatic duct. And you'll notice the pancreatic duct is going to also connect to that area where the common bile duct connects and drain its secretions into the duodenum through that major duodenal papillae. So those are the kind of the general functions of the accessory gland organs. So liver produces and releases bile into the duodenum, gallbladder stores and releases it into the duodenum, and the pancreas produces and releases digestive enzymes and bicarbonate, again, into the duodenum. So it's all going in through the duodenum. All right, so we're going to focus on the liver and kind of talk about the anatomy of that organ and how the bile is, or at least the pathway, where the bile is produced and the pathway that it takes to get to the hepatic ducts, and then we'll also talk about the flow of blood through the liver as well. All right, so 22, we have a picture here. Slide down to, here's our liver. This is what we looked at in lab. We identified the right and the left lobe of the liver, and the gallbladder was on the inferior surface. So these are our lobes. So if we were to look microscopically and see what these lobes are made up of, they're made up of a bunch of little lobules. And so if we were to cut the liver open and be able to take a microscope to it, we would see these. Here's one. We would see these little lobules. This is one lobule, and there's another lobule, and there's another lobule. They call them hepatic lobules, since hepatic is the term for liver. So that's what those lobes are made up of, are individual little lobules. And these little lobules are the kind of the functional unit of the liver. These guys are where the action is happening, so in the liver. All right, so we're gonna zoom in on part of that lobule. So we're zooming in on this part. So you'll notice that we have like the periphery of the lobule, and then in the center we have it's a vein actually in the center there. So so we're going to look at the section of the lobule where we can see the center part here, and then this out here is the periphery. And now you can see a lot better what these lobules are made up of. So each one of those cells is called a hepatocyte. So hepatocyte is the term for liver cell. So there's the term. So those are the hepatocytes. And then you will notice, again, this is the center of that lobule, and this is the called the central vein, since it's in the center of the lobule. So that's central vein. And then over here we have 3 vessels. And since we have 3, they call them a portal triad. Triad meaning 3. And we'll talk about the portal part. You've heard that word before. So this is our hepatic artery. It's not the actual hepatic artery. It's this. We're at the microscopic level, so that's a little bitty tiny microscopic branch, but it came off of the hepatic artery. Remember, that was one of the arteries that came off the celiac trunk, which came off of the abdominal aorta. So this is a little branch of the hepatic artery. It's carrying oxygenated blood, because it came from the aorta, carrying oxygenated blood in here to our hepatocytes. So that's one part of the portal triad. This is the other part. This is the branch of the hepatic portal vein. So if you remember in lab, we had that hepatic portal vein. Its function was to take nutrient-rich blood to the liver, and it was coming from the intestines and from the spleen. So this is just a small microscopic branch off of that hepatic portal vein. So this is that's the second part of our portal triad, is the branch of the hepatic portal vein. And again, that blood's coming from our intestines. I think there's a picture. Yeah. So just to remind you, so this is the mesenteric arteries that are veins, that are coming from our intestines, large and small, and there's one from the spleen too. So that's all that blood. We don't want it to go directly into the circulation. We don't want all that blood that's coming from our intestines or our spleen to go into the inferior vena cava, because that blood and those nutrients in that blood, remember these are especially the intestines, small, they're absorbing all those nutrients and products from the food that we digested. So we want to make sure all of those things in the food all those nutrients and molecules that we absorb from the food pass through the liver for sort of processing, sort of evaluation, to make sure that there's not something in there that could harm our cells. So they will go to the liver first through the hepatic portal vein before that blood actually gets to the inferior vena cava into systemic circulation. So that's what this branch is the little tiny microscopic branch off of that hepatic portal vein. So there's actually two sources of blood coming to the liver. So one's through the hepatic artery and one's through the hepatic portal vein. All right, and then the third part of the portal triad is the bile ductule. So the bile ductule is going to be carrying just the bile, so this is not going to be any blood in there. So those make up the portal triad. And again, these are the hepatocytes, and that's the central vein. Realize that central vein will eventually merge all the central veins within the liver will merge, and all that blood that's leaving the liver through the central veins will eventually drain into the hepatic veins and then into the inferior vena cava. So, all right. So what we want you to be familiar with is how the blood flows through our liver and then how the bile flows. So we'll do the blood first. So we have, again, two, it kind of tells it down here too, two sources of blood coming into the liver. One's through the hepatic artery. And so that blood's coming, and we know that blood's oxygenated, so its main function is to come in here and provide oxygen and nutrients to these hepatocytes so they can continue to function properly. So when that hepatic artery gets, the blood gets in that lobule, it will enter a sinusoid. So these are the little sinusoids here. Hopefully you remember sinusoids, where I pulled up the picture to remind you, I think it's here. Remember the sinusoids were a type of capillary that was very permeable, had a lot of openings, an incomplete basement membrane, all that kind of stuff going on in there. So a lot of things can pass easily through that capillary that's in our lobules, hepatic lobules. So that blood's gonna come in there, and things are gonna pass out oxygen and nutrients so we supply the hepatocytes with what they need, and then any waste products and carbon dioxide will get back in. So that was one source of blood. The other one is the blood coming from the portal vein, so from the hepatic portal vein. And again, that blood is coming from our intestines and our spleen and things. So that blood comes in. It's not oxygenated, it's deoxygenated, but it's really high in nutrients, but it could have other stuff in there that, our cells may not be accustomed to. So that blood's going to come in. It's also going to go into that sinusoid. But then the hepatocytes are going to take up some of those components, some of those nutrients, and convert them, process them, I guess we say, into things that won't be harmful to our cells, and actually that our cells can use. And if there's anything toxic, any toxins that might be something that we got absorbed in the small intestines, then the hepatocytes can neutralize them. There's also, you can see one here, there's little macrophages. Remember, those are the little white blood cells that come from the monocytes in the blood. They're located in the sinusoid, so they can take care of any sort of foreign, like bacteria or anything that shouldn't be in there. They can phagocytize it, eat it, so it doesn't continue on and get into the bloodstream. So that's where the blood's going to flow first, is through the hepatic artery and the hepatic portal vein and into the sinusoids, hepatic sinusoids, and then all those processes will happen. And then the blood will move to the central vein at that point. So then that blood is considered safe to go back into circulation. So that it would move into the central veins. All the central veins will merge and then dump all their blood into hepatic veins, and the hepatic veins blood will move into the inferior vena cava and then up to the heart, so it can be pumped to the lungs to be oxygenated. So that's our blood flow. So the blood, you start with the hepatic artery, hepatic capillaries, hepatic veins, and then the inferior vena cava. And again, this is the one that's oxygenated and carrying all those nutrients and oxygen to the hepatocytes. And then from the mesenteric and splenic veins, that blood moves into the hepatic portal vein, into the hepatic sinusoids, hepatic veins, inferior vena cava. So that's a little breakdown of the flow of blood through the liver. All right, so next we're going to talk about the bile, and I don't have much time, so let me hurry up here. So the bile is produced by the liver, specifically by the hepatocytes. So once the hepatocytes have produced the bile, it'll drain into these very small bile canaliculi, they call them. And then from there, all that bile will drain into the bile ductule, which is part of the portal triad. And then those bile ductules will drain into the bigger hepatic ducts, common bile duct, and go on from there. And then again, it'll go into the duodenum, or it'll be stored in in the gallbladder. So, all right, I'll see you in the next video.